If you couldn't tell based on the April Fool's video I uploaded, I've had somewhat of an interest in playing Team Fortress 2 again lately. It's been quite a few years since I've really been into playing it, but after coming back and being disappointed by the lack of major updates, there is one area of the game that has continued to change and evolve over time, that being the in-game economy. While there is a lot someone could discuss regarding the hat economy of Team Fortress 2, something really stood out to me. There are a lot of rare items in this game, and I'm not just talking about unusuals. Rare and limited time items aren't exactly something special or unique to Team Fortress 2. Plenty of games have them, whether we're talking about cosmetic items in a game like Sea of Thieves that have no value beyond aesthetics, or rare items like party hats in RuneScape that have a real tradable value to them. But the impression that I've always had from many games whose rare items fall into the latter category of having a real monetary value is that developers usually try to limit the addition of such items into the game. They can easily become objects involved in real money trading, make people the target of scams and hacks, can upset players who may have not been around when they were added to the game, and often appear to be more trouble than they're worth. Or maybe they were just added at a point when the player base is large enough that so many copies exist, and they have no notable value. Meanwhile, Team Fortress 2 has a large number of rare items that have been injected into the game over the years that have managed to obtain massive price tags, and not all of these items may have been intended by Valve to be rare or obtainable, yet they don't really seem to care about the existence of rare items obtained through glitches, dupes, or other tricks. So all of this got me thinking, what are the most valuable rare items in Team Fortress 2, and where do they come from? And to make things a bit more interesting, I thought we'd take a look at the most valuable items in each quality, rather than just jumping straight into unusuals, dropping a few names, and ending it by mentioning the Burning Team Captain and concluding the video. Before getting into it, I want to ask everyone a question. What gives a rare item value in Team Fortress 2? Now, it seems like an obvious question. The rarity gives it value. The rarer an item is, the more it's worth. But it's usually not that simple for a lot of items. Maybe for some of the rarest one-of-a-kind items, sure. But value still comes from a variety of factors. For example, let's compare an item like the Big Kill and the genuine Half Satoichi. The Big Kill has a current price tag of around 7 keys, while the genuine Half Satoichi comes in at just under 60 refined. If we go off of the inventory scans that backpack.tf provides for the number of each item, the Big Kill has around 12 to 13,000 known copies. The genuine Half Satoichi by comparison only has around 8,600 known copies. So if the genuine Half Satoichi, and for that matter a lot of other genuine items from around the same time period, have a lower supply, then why are they often worth so much less than something like the Big Kill, or a Bill's hat or earbuds? Why is a Max's head worth almost 30 keys, while the Big Kill is only worth 7, if they came from the same promotion and have nearly the same number of copies? Let's go back to our original comparison and start looking at a few different factors. First, how difficult was each item to get? Well, neither of them was really that difficult to obtain. All you had to do was buy a game and be a Team Fortress 2 player back in its early days. Alright, what about the popularity of using each item? This can play a bit more into the pricing of things like unusuals or weapon skins, where people want to have good looking hats and good looking weapons that they'll actually use, but could still be considered an effect here. The Big Kill is a good option for a fancy revolver replacement since it's the only stock revolver skin with a different model. So if you've got the keys to burn and enjoy spy, it's not a bad choice. Meanwhile, the Half Satoichi really doesn't seem to be used that much. You probably have better options for Soldier like the Escape Plan, Disciplinary Action, or Market Gardener, and for Demo Man, you're probably only going to use this as a demo night, and you have plenty of other good weapons to choose from if that's what you're going for. This brings us on to our next factor that probably influences things the most in a comparison like this: alternative options. If I want to use the Big Kill for my spy loadout, I only have 3 purchasing options. I can buy a regular version for 7 keys, I can find someone selling one of 7 known non-craftable versions for 190 keys, or one of only 9 known vintage copies for 600 plus keys. Meanwhile, the half Satoichi has a regular version for the price of 1 weapon. I could get a strange version for just a bit more than a genuine, or I could even get something more rare like the vintage half Satoichi or even a collector's version. The only reason to buy a genuine half Satoichi would be because you really like genuine items or you're just a collector. And if you really like using the half Satoichi, why not just pay a bit more to get a strange version that'll record your kills and that can be customized with other strange parts? I'm not saying alternative options is the biggest thing influencing prices, and rarity can play a pretty big part in pricing, as we'll see with some items. But if you consider various factors, it's usually not difficult to figure out why an item has become so valuable. With that out of the way, let's look at our first item, quality. Vintage quality items are something that we haven't seen added to the game ever since its early days. When the Manconomy update that added trading to the game was released back in 2011, one of the updates made to many hats and weapons existing at the time was to give them the vintage quality to signify that they had existed before the update went live. As a result of this, you'll typically only see older items that had been released before the Manconomy update that are vintage, with a few exceptions for some other items given out or crafted before changes to something like a crafting recipe. However, the most valuable vintage items weren't so legitimately obtained. You see, way back in the early days of Team Fortress 2, there was another way to obtain vintage quality items. If you accidentally deleted some of your items and asked Steam support to restore them, they would restore the items to your inventory as vintage copies. Once some players began to catch on to this, they'd conveniently lose their items to have Steam support restore them as unobtainable vintage versions. Knowledge of this doesn't seem to have been too widespread in the community at the time, and Valve would catch on a short time later that people were exploiting this, and started returning items in their original state, but this was only after a bunch of random items were made vintage. Of course, not everyone was abusing the system, but as a result, you now have things like vintage medals, some vintage class tokens, vintage gibbuses, and the rare item that seems to have been exploited the most, the vintage Bill's hat. There is also the vintage shortstop that seems to have been obtained from some other glitch involving support, since there's only one non-duped copy, but for most of the other valuable items, they come from this other support restore abuse. Saying all of this, some of the most valuable vintage items are what you might expect given the time that this was going on. You have the vintage Big Kill worth several hundred keys, a vintage Max's head at 800 keys, vintage earbuds priced at 825 keys, and all of these have less than 10 known copies each. But there is one vintage weapon that far exceeds the price of these items, that being the vintage Community Sparkle Luger Morph. Before being given out as a prize for playing Poker Night at the Inventory 1, the Luger Morph was originally given out alongside the Big Kill and Max's Severed Head as promotional items for purchasing Sam and Max, the Devil's Playhouse, before April 26, 2010. If you were a developer at Telltale that worked on the game, however, instead of receiving a regular Luger Morph, Valve decided to give them self-made Luger Morphs that had the Community Sparkle effect. When Poker Night at the Inventory was released later that year and brought back the Luger Morph, all previous Luger Morphs obtained from the Sam and Max promo were changed to be vintage, including these self-made Luger Morphs that the developers had. And not only did that make these weapons vintage with the Community Sparkle effect, but it also made them tradable. While there may be a few dozen known vintage Community Sparkle Luger Morphs, not all of them have entered the open market over the years. And of course, there are some duped copies floating around out there. But given the fact that not only are they so rare, but they are the only tradable item with the Community Sparkles effect that you can actually equip and see in-game, it's easy to see why the vintage Community Sparkle Luger Morph comes in at a price of 3,160 keys. It's been a while since any tradable genuine quality items have been released. If you were playing this game 11 years ago, then you probably remember them being added pretty regularly as promotional items for other games being released on Steam. The first genuine items arrived on February 3rd, 2011, when the Rift promotional items were added, giving some players the genuine Sun on a Stick and the genuine Sharpened Volcano Fragment. This was followed by the Homefront promotion a few weeks later, giving out the Hero's Hachimaki, and less than 2 weeks after that, the Shogun pack for pre-purchasing Total War Shogun 2 was added to the game. Most genuine items have really never had much of a high price, usually only costing a bit more than their normal versions since they aren't extremely rare, usually weren't difficult to get, and don't offer anything unique beyond a different colored name. While the price gap has slowly grown over time, most of them still aren't worth a lot. There are, however, a few exceptions. Items like the Friends Forever Companion Square badge, worth about 46 keys, and the Robo Sandwich, worth about 123 keys, are mostly carried by the fact that they don't have non-genuine versions available. Both of these items were only available for limited periods of time for buying certain products from 3A Toys at the 2012 San Diego Comic-Con, or in the Robo Sandwich's case, limited re-releases on the Valve store. The genuine Grandmaster is pretty similar. Coming in at 53 keys, it was only available for those who purchased the Team Fortress 2 chess set back in 2013. I was actually somewhat surprised that the AAA badge that came with the Robo Sandwich and Friends Forever Companion Square was so cheap in comparison. If I had to guess, it might just be that player preference is at work here, since I don't know how many people care about badge cosmetics. This could also explain why the Companion Square is worth so much less than the Sandwich, despite there only being 256 known copies of the Companion Square compared to the 1,485 known copies of the Sandwich. That being said, rarity can play a big part in affecting prices here, as we see with the most expensive genuine item, the genuine Nabbler. Once again, this one comes from purchasing a double pack of Pyro Robot toys from 3A Toys. But unlike the other 3A Toys promotional genuines, there are very few copies of the genuine Nabbler available. According to Backpack.tf, there are only just over 30 copies of this item in existence, resulting in their price of 176 keys. This pricing largely comes down to rarity, given that the Nabbler has craftable versions. As for how difficult it would be to find a buyer willing to pay 176 keys for one, who knows? But for now, they have one of the highest prices. I also want to give a brief mention of a couple other valuable genuine items. There exist a few strange genuine items like the strange genuine Archimedes, Widowmaker, etc. that were all made by using strangifiers on genuine items. As for how many exist and what the price should be, seems to be up to some debate, but they are out there. The other item I wanted to mention is the genuine AppSap that was obtainable from buying the Portal 2 Songs to Test By CD. Despite there being a bit over 10,000 known copies, making it less rare than a lot of other genuines, it actually still maintains a pretty high price, not just for being a unique Sapper reskin, but also because the only other way to get an AppSap is to buy an uncraftable version from the Manco store for $10. Resulting in even the regular version being worth a decent amount. Unusuals are probably the most unique area of the market for rare items due to having their own set of unique factors that influence their prices, such as the unusual effect, the item it's on, and sort of just whatever someone is willing to pay for it once the price gets high enough. You can't really say that an unusual has a price, however, until it's actually been sold though. Sure, your low-tier hat with a low-tier effect may be a one-of-a-kind item, but is anyone really going to pay 10,000 keys for it? As a result, take some of these prices with a grain of salt. They could very easily be worth more than the recorded prices, but there might not be enough sales info to create a price update on Backpack.tf. Case in point, hats like the Dead President's Virtual Viewfinder. The listed price? 120 keys. The price it's actually being sold for? 450 keys with quick buy prices from bots that are more than double the listed price. Anyways, most people probably think that the answer for the most valuable unusual is obviously the Burning Team Captain. After all, this is the hat that carried the reputation for not just being the most valuable unusual, but the most valuable item in the game. The Burning Team Captain was considered the king of the unusual market with nothing surpassing it. But there is another unusual that has managed to sell for more recently. In comes the Dark Blaze Antlers. I'm sure the first thought from some people might be, how exactly does a hat like this unseat a Burning Team Captain? After all, the antlers aren't exactly the type of hat you tend to see everyone wearing, nor would it place first in a competition for the best looking cosmetic in the game. Heck, it doesn't even have the history and reputation backing it up. But there's one very simple reason that items like the antlers, the virtual viewfinder, or the polar pullover are some of the highest valued unusuals in the game, and that is because they are miscellaneous cosmetic items. Remember, the way that TF2 cosmetics are designed is that they occupy different equip regions on your character. This is what allows people to create some crazy looking loadouts because all of the items they have equipped don't take up the same region. While most unusuals are hats that occupy the, as you might expect, hat slot of your character, unusual miscellaneous items can fill in another slot, allowing people to combine multiple unusual effects at once. So typically, unusual miscellaneous items will receive a large increase to their price regardless of how they look because of this factor. This further makes items like the antlers and virtual viewfinder worth even more for being all-class unusuals in this category. And what adds even more value to the antlers is that they don't actually have an equipped region slot, meaning you can combine them with any other hat or unusual that is not another pair of antlers, even if they also don't occupy an equipped region slot themselves. And then you have one other major factor that, while I can't find any hard evidence from Valve other than claims and observations from players, but ever since 2016 or 2017, unusual miscellaneous slot items can no longer be unboxed, and no more have been added to the game. As a result of this change, there appears to be a fixed number of these unusual miscellaneous items in existence. Going back to an example I gave earlier, this is why some of the prices for unusual miscellaneous items don't match the listed prices. So we have a unique hat with a limited number that were unboxed, that's desirable for the cosmetic slot it occupies, and you have one of the highest tier unusual effects on it. As a result, the Dark Blaze Antlers managed to sell for 3 golden frying pans back at the end of 2021, giving it a current price of around 9,000 keys. By comparison, the Burning Team Captain has a recorded price of about 7,600 keys, with one actually for sale I saw around the time of this video for 6,500. Even one of the highest recorded prices for the Burning Team Captain remains just a bit short of this 9,000 key mark. Now besides this, we have items like the Circling Peace Sign Coffin Kit that sold for 2 golden frying pans, or about 6,400 keys. We have a pair of Hellfire Antlers that sold for multiple other unusuals, worth about 6,250 keys. There's the Burning Flame Antlers, Spellbreaker Polar Pullover, and more that are worth thousands of keys that all just come from unboxing at the right moment. Collector's Quality items were originally introduced back in a patch on November 12, 2013. And were obtained by completing a dropped chemistry set. Convert 200 copies of an item for that chemistry set together, and you'll get one collector's quality copy of that item. So not only was there a higher price tag to making these items, but chemistry sets were eventually removed from the game, making all of these items rarer due to their limited availability. Even at the cheapest end for something like a collector's Your Eternal Reward, you're still looking at paying quite a few keys. Meanwhile, on the more expensive side, we start running into collector's quality hats and accessories. Keep in mind that the 200 copies rule for crafting these still applied to hats, meaning that a collector's quality cosmetic was even more expensive to craft. Especially when you keep in mind that keys weren't worth as much refined as they are now. So, what hat has managed to go for the highest price? That would be the Collector's Dead of Night, which sold for $2,500 or about 1,400 keys. This would have taken dozens of keys just to make, and has one other unique factor going for it. You see, once you start getting into the higher end of collector's quality hats, you start to notice something. Most of them only have a single known copy. Collector's Dead of Night, 1 copy. Collector's Killer Exclusive, priced at 1,030 keys, 1 copy. Collector's Gray Bands worth 790 keys, also 1 copy. Most of these items were bought up years ago, and many of their owners have expressed no interest in selling them, so who knows what they could be worth today. There are some other expensive collector's items with multiple copies, such as the Collector's Conscientious Objector worth 750 keys, and there's the Collector's Rocket Jumper priced at 365 keys, but seems to be going for much more than that. Obviously, they're just fancy collector's items for people who like the weapons, given that no other qualities exist for them, and you can do stuff like put funny pictures on the objector. But it is also worth considering that they were probably more expensive to craft compared to other weapons, given that both of them have historically been worth more than half a scrap. Overall, collector's quality items are just that, collector's items. They don't do anything special, nor do they look any different, but they are still valuable for their rarity. Strange quality items have been around in the game ever since the Uber update back in 2011, where Manco crates 19 through 21 now had strange variants of weapons that tracked kills instead of the normal versions that were in earlier crates. Unboxing would be the main method of obtaining strange items, as the pool of available weapons increased over time with the release of subsequent crates. This would eventually expand to include hats, strangifiers that could be applied to items that hadn't been in a crate, bot killers, Australiums, weapon skins, and more, along with the addition of strange parts in 2012 that could be added to items to track more than just kills. Given so many different sources for strange items exist, I want to take a look at a few different categories. First, what is the most expensive strange item in general? I'm sure most players are familiar with it, but that would probably be the golden frying pan, worth around 3,000 keys. Compared to most items discussed, the golden frying pan is still obtainable as an extremely rare drop for completing a tour of duty in man-up mode, and as of right now, there are only a few hundred known copies. So why is it worth so much if the golden frying pan is still obtainable, especially compared to other Australium items? Well, compared to other Australium weapons, there are significantly less golden frying pans. We have around 6,900 Australium sniper rifles, around 7,200 Australium rocket launchers, about 2,100 Australium Islanders, you get the idea. All of this is compared to the much smaller number of frying pans that have been obtained over nearly 9 years and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of completed tours of duty. It comes with a professional kill streak, it turns people gold upon kills, it can be equipped by all classes including engineer and spy, unlike the regular frying pan, it's strange, it's rare, and to top it off, it's become the currency for extremely high-end trading. But what about the most expensive strange we could unbox from a crate? Avoiding the topic of skins for the moment, that appears to be the strange catastrophic companions at a price of around 400 to 500 keys, obtained from the 2015 Gargoyle case for Halloween. This item is also still technically available, but if you wanted to try to get one, you're looking at having to spend around 3 to 4 keys for a crate and its respective key. Also, you can have a 0.5% chance of getting the catastrophic companions, along with another small chance of having it actually be strange. The price here seems to be driven by people buying up older unboxed items and the costs associated with trying to unbox them, rather than just rarity, given that plenty of other elite grade strange items from the last few years haven't even come close to the price of this item, despite a similar number existing. Then again, it could just be popularity, considering I don't know how many people care for Mr. Bones or whatever random object they decided to pile onto a character's head this year. As for the most valuable strange weapon for unboxing, that would probably be the strange bat saber at around 200 keys, for a pretty similar reason to the catastrophic companions. It's from a limited time crate that's become more expensive to unbox, it's rare to obtain, and it vaporizes enemies upon kills. If we're looking at weapons before grading was a thing, the award for most expensive goes to the strange gunslinger at around 130 keys. This one was found in crate number 30 from the old salvage series of crates Valve used to release, and had the same 19.8% chance of dropping alongside the Kritzkrieg, Ullapool Caber, Holy Mackerel, and Machina. Given that you could only get them from this now unobtainable crate with a low drop chance, it's not too surprising that this weapon has become worth so much over the years. Especially when you consider that most people aren't rushing to unbox the remaining crate number 30s, given that they're worth anywhere between 60 to 85 keys, and you'd only have a 1 in 5 chance of getting the Gunslinger to make your money back. Otherwise, you might get a caber only worth 9 keys. Now we come to skins. This is kind of its own rarity, but I thought I'd just include it in this section to explain why I haven't mentioned them anywhere else. Honestly, I'm just not really sure what the most valuable strange skin would be, given that there's so much subjective opinion when you get on the more valuable end of skin trading. Combine that with outdated prices or just a lack of price history, and it becomes difficult to figure out what the most valuable one would be. Is this one listing for a battle-scarred strange geometric team Scorch Shot with no sales history, no backpack.tf classified listings for the Warpaint, no price suggestion history, only a few hundred known copies of the Warpaint, and a listed price of only $3.72, worth the $1,800 this person is currently listing it for on the community market? I don't know. There is the strange Isotope Warhawk rocket launcher that was one of the first strange unusual elite grade weapons unboxed. When someone managed to unbox this, plenty of people started throwing around an estimated price of somewhere between 5 to 9,000 keys. Despite this massive price tag people were giving, the owner would end up selling it for $5,000, giving it a key price of only 2,800 keys. A price far lower than what some people would consider it to be worth. Besides this, there are a few other skin sets in particular I want to mention, that being the Harvest Collection and the Gentleman's Collection, that were only available from completing contracts during the Tough Break update. While you might still be able to get your hands on well-worn, battle-scarred, or even minimum wear copies of these weapons, the real value is found in the factory new variants. Due to people performing trade-ups for Stranges over the years, and the massive number of weapons needed to obtain the coveted Commando-grade Strange weapons, the number of available factory new civilian weapons in these sets needed for trade-ups has drastically decreased. Don't be fooled if you go looking at price listings for some of these weapons. A lot of these are outdated. These days, Strange factory new weapons from these collections in the Commando, Mercenary, or even Freelance grades can easily go for hundreds, if not thousands of keys. You even have one of the weapons from the Gentleman's Collection, the Strange factory new top shelf minigun, that has no known copies. It could still technically be made, but it would likely cost someone tens of thousands of dollars worth of keys just to track down all the weapons needed to try crafting it. And assuming they can even find enough strange weapons of lower quality to trade up, you'd still only have a 1 in 3 chance of getting the minigun. This could very well be the most valuable strange quality item in the game, but as of right now, no one can really say what it's worth because it doesn't exist. Even if you got one of the other two strange top shelf weapons, while you may have not made your money back, you'd still have an item worth well over 1,000 keys, and this is an older price for the top shelf grenade launcher I saw. Heck, even a strange field-tested top-shelf wrench managed to sell for nearly 700 keys 6 months ago. Strange weapons you find from these collections aren't cheap, and they only go up as you get into higher grades and better wares. I'm just grouping these two qualities together since they have pretty similar sources for their most valuable items. Normal quality is usually reserved for stock items, while unique is considered something of a default quality for everything else. Typically, the valuable items here come from glitches or Steam support item restoration errors. At the top end for normal quality items, we have the normal frying pan. For a long time, it seems like no one really knew anything about this item or who its owner was, beyond that it was probably just another Steam support glitched item in a private inventory. That was until just over a year ago, its owner decided to place it up for auction, where it sold for a golden frying pan and $1,400, giving it an at the time sales price of 2,836 keys. Now for unique quality, the award goes to a non-craftable upgrade to premium gift. Once again, its existence seems to be traced back to Steam support. What makes this item unique is that it doesn't actually appear to have an inventory image, instead just displaying as a white square. Only one known copy exists, and it last sold about 2 years ago for $1,250, giving an approximate price of 690 keys at that time. Besides these two, there are plenty of other valuable glitched items in this category. The normal Master's Yellow Belt was sold along with the Collector's Yellow Belt for $3,000, and when the Collector's version price was subtracted from this, it gave the normal Master's Yellow Belt a price of 1,440 keys. There's the normal Black Rose, priced at 837 keys, but its price hasn't been updated in over 9 years, and word is their owners aren't interested in ever selling them. Then unique items like the strange unique Australian sniper rifle or rocket launcher were the result of very short-lived glitches involving the rewards from Man Up mode, while other strange normal and unique weapons would be attributed to unboxing glitches. Haunted quality items originally arrived back in the 2011 Halloween patch, where players could occasionally find Halloween cosmetic items while playing on the Halloween map Iodot, and these items might have the haunted quality to them. Future Halloween events over the next few years would release more items that were obtainable in a similar fashion, while being untradeable, with the tradable versions being obtained from unboxing Halloween crates. Just like a lot of other item qualities, it's been years since any haunted items have been added to the game, and they're typically not an item most people think about, considering they mostly appear on items with the Halloween or full moon restriction, but that hasn't stopped some of them from obtaining some pretty serious value. The Haunted Chicken Kiev sits at a price around 27 keys, while the strange Haunted Beat Man is currently going for around 40. And above both of these sits the strange Haunted Huntkopf. This one has a listed price of 53 to 70 keys, but may be worth more than this. There are 348 known tradable copies of the Haunted version compared to the 2,587 known copies of the tradable Unique variant. And assuming you can find a unique copy for sale that isn't heavily marked up due to having a spell effect for additional value, you're probably still going to be paying more than the listed price of 24 to 34 keys. So it might be worth more due to supply and demand of being a more popular looking item with a limited supply, although the only theory I can find explaining the price is everyone blaming furries. Take that how you will. At least untradeable versions are still available from Halloween trade-ins if you're willing to gamble on that. Finally, I'll make this last category brief since I debated whether to put it in at all, but it won't take long. Items with the SelfMade Quality are given out to people who made cosmetics, war paints, or other items for the game, and none of them are tradable. Ignoring the Community Sparkle Lugermorph since that's a vintage item, the other exception is found in SelfMade Keys that were given out to people who had their items in special crates for those keys, and the Self-Made Duck token that was given out to people who contributed to the end-of-the-line update back in 2014. I don't think anything really affects the price of these beyond them just being a cool collector's item that someone was willing to pay whatever the seller was asking for. All of them are generally worth a few hundred keys each, with the Self-Made Winter Nice Crate key having sold for the most at 829 keys. And if anyone's curious, no, the people who claim to have unboxed with self-made keys report that they did not receive self-made quality items out of the crate. Alright, I'll admit, there may be a few items I've completely missed or failed to mention due to being unsure of their price. Take the painted cow mangler for example. These were obtained from a glitch involving test weapons from the Manco store that were paintable for a brief period of time. There's about 15 of them that exist, and the only sales listings I could find went back to TF2 Outpost, which doesn't really offer much these days. I could believe they're the most valuable unique item in the game, but I have no idea what they'd even be worth. The same thing applies to a lot of the other painted glitched items I could find, although given that most of these don't show up in game like the cow mangler, I'm willing to bet that they aren't quite as valuable. Then you hear people talking about other valuable rare items existing, like the vintage Guadalajara, unusual Bill's hats, unusual Max's head, or an unusual golden frying pan, and then you look into it only to learn that all of them either belong to Valve employees, or they're untradeable and belong to people who reported exploits to Valve. Or you end up having items like the SelfMade Max's head and the SelfMade Big Kill that it sounds like were tradable at one point because they were gift wrapped due to being possibly hijacked a long time ago, before they were unwrapped years later where they're now untradeable and stuck in people's inventories. Tons of one-of-a-kind rare items exist in this game, or maybe you think it's one of a kind only to learn that another copy exists in someone's private backpack or banned account. Still, no matter what happens in the future, I'd be willing to bet that regardless of whether this game receives another major update or not, we might just see more rare items enter the game during its remaining lifespan through unintentional ways. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe for more interesting topics. Until next time, catch you next time.